Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is not just another superhero film. It's an emotional journey that honors a legacy while building a powerful new future. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into the full story of where we'll break down every important moment, character, and twist in a simple and engaging way. From the heartbreaking loss of King T'Challa to the rise of as the new Black Panther, this movie brings together action, emotion, and powerful storytelling like never before. We'll also explore the mysterious underwater kingdom ruled by Namor and how his conflict with Wakanda changes everything. Along with explaining the complete story, I'll give you an honest review of the movie, talking about its performances, visuals, music, and whether it truly lives up to the hype. So if you want to understand the full story, hidden meanings, and whether this film is worth your time, make sure to watch till the end, because this video is going to cover everything you need to know. The story of Wakanda begins on an emotional and heartbreaking note, setting the tone for everything that follows. Wakanda is in crisis as desperately works in her lab, trying to recreate the heart-shaped herb that once gave the Black Panther his powers. Her goal is clear. She wants to save her brother, King T'Challa, who is dying from an unknown illness. Despite her genius-level intellect and advanced Wakandan technology, Shuri struggles against time, refusing to accept the possibility of losing him. The urgency, tension, and emotional weight in this opening immediately pull the audience into the story. However, despite all her efforts, Shuri fails. The film does not show T'Challa's death directly, but the impact is deeply felt as Wakanda mourns the loss of its king. A grand funeral ceremony takes place, blending tradition, music, and culture in a powerful tribute. The entire nation dresses in white, symbolizing both mourning and celebration of life. Stands strong as the leader, while Shuri is completely broken from the inside, unable to process her grief. This moment is not just about loss. It marks the beginning of a new chapter for Wakanda. As time passes, Wakanda faces increasing pressure from the outside world. Other nations are now aware of Wakanda's vibranium resources and are eager to get their hands on it. During a tense international meeting, Queen Ramonda addresses world leaders, making it clear that Wakanda will not share its vibranium. At the same time, she exposes how some countries have already attempted to steal it. This scene establishes Wakanda as a powerful but targeted nation, surrounded by growing threats. Meanwhile, in another part of the world, a secret operation is underway in the ocean. A group of scientists and mercenaries are using a vibranium-detecting machine to locate deposits underwater. This mission is secretly backed by powerful global forces. However, their operation takes a terrifying turn when mysterious blue-skinned warriors attack from the depths. These warriors are fast, silent, and deadly. One by one, the crew members are taken down in a haunting sequence that introduces a completely new and unknown threat. This attack leads to the introduction of the ruler of an advanced underwater civilization known as Talokan. Unlike typical villains, Namor is calm, composed, and deeply connected to his people. His motivations are not rooted in greed, but in protection. He believes that the surface world is dangerous and destructive, and he is willing to go to extreme lengths to protect Talokan from being discovered and exploited. Back in Wakanda, Queen Ramonda and her advisors learn about the underwater attack and realize that a new enemy has emerged, one that is just as powerful and secretive as Wakanda itself. The situation becomes even more complicated when they discover that the vibranium-detecting machine was created by a young genius scientist named Riri. This revelation sets the stage for the next major conflict, as both Wakanda and Talokan begin to move toward a dangerous collision. The story focuses heavily on grief, political tension, and the introduction of new threats. It establishes the emotional core of the film while slowly building toward a much larger conflict. The absence of T'Challa is felt in every moment, and the question remains, who will rise to protect Wakanda now? As the tension introduced in the opening chapter begins to rise, Wakanda finds itself standing at the edge of an unknown conflict, one that is not only political but deeply personal. After learning that the vibranium detecting machine was created by a young American genius, Queen Ramonda makes a critical decision. She sends And on a secret mission to find Riri before anyone else does. Their goal is simple but urgent. Bring her safely to Wakanda before their new enemy gets to her first. Shuri and Okoye travel to the United States, blending into the outside world in a way that feels unfamiliar to both of them. Shuri, still emotionally distant after the loss of her brother, shows little interest in the mission beyond its necessity. Her grief has made her more withdrawn, more logical, and less connected to the spiritual side of Wakandan culture. Okoye, on the other hand, remains focused and disciplined, acting as both protector and guide. When they finally locate Riri at MIT, they discover a brilliant but bold young woman who has no idea how dangerous her invention has become. Riri is initially defensive and confused when confronted, but things quickly spiral out of control. Before Wakanda can safely extract her, they are ambushed by forces working under. What follows is an intense and chaotic chase through the city streets. Riri, showing her ingenuity, activates a prototype armored suit, crude compared to Wakandan tech, but powerful enough to escape immediate danger. Shuri and Okoye assist her, and together they narrowly evade capture. However, the situation doesn't end in their favor. Soon after, they are intercepted by Talokan warriors, Namor's elite underwater soldiers. Unlike the earlier ocean attack, this encounter is more direct and controlled. Shuri and Riri are captured and taken beneath the ocean into the hidden Kingdom of Talokan. Okoye, unable to save them, is forced to return to Wakanda alone, carrying the heavy burden of failure. This moment marks a major turning point in the story. For the first time, Wakanda realizes that they are not dealing with a distant or invisible enemy anymore. The threat is real, powerful, and already making strategic moves. Back in Wakanda, Queen Ramonda reacts with anger and disappointment at Okoye's failure. In a powerful and emotional scene, she strips Okoye of her title as General of the Dora Milaje. This decision highlights the immense pressure Ramonda is under, not just as a queen, but as a mother who has now potentially lost her daughter as well. Meanwhile, beneath the ocean, Shuri and Riri are brought face to face with Namor in the breathtaking underwater world of Talokan. This hidden civilization is unlike anything seen before, rich in culture, history, and advanced technology powered by vibranium. Namor does not treat Shuri as a prisoner in the traditional sense. Instead, he speaks to her with respect and openness, offering her a deeper understanding of his people. Namor reveals his origins, explaining how his ancestors were forced into the ocean centuries ago to escape colonization and disease brought by the surface world. The vibranium they discovered underwater allowed them to evolve, creating a powerful and isolated civilization. Through this story, Namor makes it clear that his actions are driven by fear. Fear that the surface world will eventually discover and destroy Talokan, just as it has done to so many others. He proposes an alliance with Wakanda. His plan is bold and dangerous. He wants Wakanda to join him in a war against the surface world, starting with the elimination of the scientist who created the vibranium detector. In his eyes, Riri Williams is not just a person, she is a threat that must be removed to protect both Talokan and Wakanda. Shuri strongly disagrees, seeing the humanity in Riri and refusing to accept such a ruthless solution. This ideological clash between Shuri and Namor becomes one of the central conflicts of the film. Both are protecting their people, but their methods and beliefs are completely different. Shuri believes in saving lives and finding peaceful solutions, while Namor believes that survival requires strength and, if necessary, destruction. As Shuri spends more time in Talokan, she begins to understand Namor on a deeper level. There is a quiet tension between them, not just as enemies, but as two leaders shaped by loss and responsibility. However, despite this understanding, Shuri remains firm in her decision to protect Riri and return to Wakanda. Back on the surface, Queen Ramonda makes a bold move to resolve the situation. She seeks help from Nakia, who has been living away from Wakanda. Nakia, skilled in stealth and combat, is tasked with infiltrating Talokan and rescuing Shuri and Riri. This mission carries immense risk, as no one has ever successfully infiltrated Namor's kingdom before. Nakia succeeds in reaching Talokan and launching a surprise rescue. In a tense and action-filled sequence, she frees Shuri and Riri, but the escape comes at a cost. During the chaos, one of Namor's people is killed, escalating the conflict beyond repair. This single act turns a tense standoff into the beginning of an all-out war. Shuri returns to Wakanda, but the consequences of her escape quickly follow. Namor, now seeing Wakanda as an enemy rather than a potential ally, issues a warning. His patience is gone, and his next move will not be diplomatic. It will be devastating. Ends on a note of rising danger and inevitable conflict. The emotional wounds of the characters are still fresh, but now they are forced to prepare for war. Wakanda is no longer just grieving. It is under threat, and the battle for its future is about to begin. The fragile balance between Wakanda and Talokan shatters completely as the consequences of the rescue mission begin to unfold. Returns home physically safe, but emotionally more conflicted than ever. Her time in Talokan has changed her perspective. She has seen Dum is not simply a villain, but a ruler shaped by centuries of fear, pain, and survival. Yet, despite that understanding, she knows that his next move will bring destruction to Wakanda. The weight of this knowledge sits heavily on her, especially as she continues to struggle with her unresolved grief for her brother. Back in Wakanda, the atmosphere is tense and uncertain. Tries to maintain strength as a leader, but the fear of losing her daughter has left her emotionally vulnerable. She knows that Namor will retaliate, and the nation must prepare for a conflict unlike anything they have faced before. Wakanda's defenses are strengthened, borders are secured, and warriors stand ready, but beneath all of this, preparation lies a deep sense of unease. This is not just another enemy. This is a hidden empire with power equal to their own. Meanwhile, the presence of Wakanda adds another layer of urgency. Though she is now under protection, her invention has already changed the global balance of power. Shuri begins working closely with Riri, not only to understand the vibranium-detecting machine, but also to improve her suit. Through their interactions, a subtle bond forms between them. Riri's energy, humor, and determination contrast sharply with Shuri's grief-driven seriousness. But in that contrast, Shuri slowly begins to reconnect with the world around her. At the same time, tensions rise within Wakanda's leadership. Having been stripped of her rank, struggles with her sense of identity and purpose. For years, she defined herself through her role as General of the Dora Milaje, and now, without it, she feels lost. Despite this, her loyalty to Wakanda remains unshaken, and she continues to stand ready to defend her nation, even without a title. Her journey becomes one of redemption and self-worth, proving that honor is not tied to a position, but to one's actions. The looming threat finally becomes reality when Namor launches his attack. Without warning, Talokanil forces strike Wakanda in a devastating assault. The ocean itself seems to rise against the city. As water floods the streets and buildings, the attack is fast, overwhelming, and unlike anything Wakanda has ever faced. The warriors of Talokan move with terrifying precision, using water-based tactics that neutralize many of Wakanda's technological advantages. In the midst of this chaos, Namor himself enters the battle. His presence is both powerful and symbolic. He is not just leading the attack, he is sending a message. Wakanda is no longer untouchable. During the assault, several key characters fight desperately to protect their home. Shuri, Okoye, M'Baku, and others put everything on the line. But the scale of the attack is too great to fully contain. The most tragic moment comes when Ramonda sacrifices herself. As the palace floods, she chooses to save Riri Williams, ensuring that the young scientist survives. In doing so, Ramonda gives her life, marking one of the most emotional and devastating moments in the film. Her death is not just a personal loss for Shuri, it is a blow to the entire nation. Wakanda has now lost both its king and its queen. This moment becomes a turning point for Shuri. The grief she had been suppressing now transforms into anger and a desire for vengeance. She is no longer just mourning, she is ready to fight back. However, unlike before, this anger begins to cloud her judgment. The compassion she once showed toward Namor starts to fade, replaced by a need to make him pay for what he has done. After the attack, Wakanda is left damaged and shaken. The people mourn their queen, and the leadership of the nation is once again uncertain. Steps forward as a voice of strength and reason, encouraging unity and resilience. He understands that Wakanda cannot afford to fall apart now, not when a powerful enemy is still out there. In her lab, Shuri makes a decision that changes everything. Determined to protect Wakanda and avenge her family, she returns to her original goal, recreating the heart-shaped herb. Using a combination of science, memory, and the last remaining traces of vibranium, she finally succeeds. This moment represents a fusion of Wakanda's past and future, tradition, and innovation, coming together through Shuri's unique perspective. As she prepares to take the herb, the question is no longer whether Wakanda needs a Black Panther, it is what kind of Black Panther Shuri will become. Will she be guided by justice and protection, like her brother, or by anger and revenge, shaped by her pain? On this powerful and uncertain note, Wakanda has suffered great loss. Its enemy has proven its strength, and Shuri stands at the edge of transformation. The next step will not just decide the fate of the war, it will define who she truly is. In the aftermath of Queen Ramonda's death, Wakanda enters a period of deep mourning, but beneath the grief, a powerful transformation is beginning to take shape. Now carrying the weight of losing both her brother and her mother, isolates herself in her lab. Her sorrow has hardened into something more intense: anger, determination, and a quiet hunger for justice that is dangerously close to vengeance. The responsibility of Wakanda now rests heavily on her shoulders, and she knows that without the Black Panther, her nation stands vulnerable against the forces of Talokan. After finally recreating the heart-shaped herb, Shuri prepares for the ancient ritual. This moment is deeply symbolic, connecting Wakanda's traditions with her scientific achievement. Unlike past Black Panthers, who inherited their power through lineage and spiritual belief, Shuri has forged her own path, combining intellect with heritage. As she consumes the herb, she enters the ancestral plane, expecting to see her brother T'Challa and perhaps find peace or guidance. Instead, she is confronted by an unexpected figure. Killmonger's presence is shocking but deeply meaningful. He represents the path of rage, vengeance, and uncompromising strength. He challenges Shuri's motivations, asking her a question that cuts to the core. Is she seeking to protect Wakanda, or is she driven by a desire to destroy her enemies? This encounter forces Shuri to confront her inner conflict. She realizes that, like Killmonger, she is fueled by loss and anger, but unlike him, she still has a choice in how she acts. This moment defines the kind of Black Panther she could become and the danger of losing herself to vengeance. When Shuri awakens, she has gained the powers of the Black Panther. The physical transformation is immediate: enhanced strength, speed, and agility, but the emotional and psychological transformation is far more complex. Her suit, redesigned with advanced technology, reflects her identity as both a scientist and a warrior. However, her mindset is still clouded by anger. She is ready to face Namor, not just to protect Wakanda, but to make him suffer for what he has taken from her. Back in the council chambers, Wakanda's leaders gather to decide their next move. Urges caution, reminding everyone that rushing into war could lead to even greater loss. He suggests that Wakanda should focus on defense and rebuilding rather than revenge. However, Shuri, now the Black Panther, has a different plan. She believes that the only way to end the threat is to confront Namor directly and force him into a decisive battle. Her strategy is bold and risky. Instead of waiting for Talokan to attack again, Wakanda will take the fight to them, but on their own terms. Shuri proposes luring Namor out of the water where he is strongest and into a controlled environment where his abilities can be weakened. This plan requires precision, coordination, and complete trust from Wakanda's warriors. Despite their concerns, the Council ultimately agrees, recognizing that inaction is no longer an option. Meanwhile, Yori continues to upgrade her armor, preparing to fight alongside Wakanda. Her growth throughout the story becomes more evident here. She is no longer just a genius student, caught in a dangerous situation, but a hero willing to stand and fight for something greater than herself. Her partnership with Shuri deepens, though she senses the anger driving Shuri's decisions and worries about the consequences. Also finds her path again. Though she no longer holds her title, she is given a new role and new armor, symbolizing her rebirth as a warrior. This transformation restores her sense of purpose, proving that her strength and loyalty were never dependent on her rank. She joins the mission with renewed determination, ready to defend Wakanda at any cost. As preparations continue, Wakanda unites once again, not just as a nation, but as a family bound by shared loss and resilience. The grief of losing T'Challa and Ramonda is still present, but it has begun to transform into strength. Every warrior, every leader, and every citizen understands what is at stake. This is not just about survival. It is about protecting their identity, their culture, and their future. The plan is set into motion on the open ocean. Wakandan forces use a vibranium detector as bait, knowing it will draw Namor and his warriors out. The battlefield is carefully chosen, a location where Wakanda can control the environment and limit Talokan's advantages. As the ships move into position, the tension builds. Everyone knows that once this battle begins, there will be no turning back. With this sense of anticipation and inevitability, Shuri stands at the center of it all, now fully transformed into the Black Panther, but still carrying the weight of her anger. The stage is set for the final confrontation, a battle that will not only decide the fate of Wakanda and Talokan, but also determine what kind of leader Shuri will ultimately become. As Wakanda's plan unfolds on the open ocean, the atmosphere becomes charged with tension and anticipation. The trap set is precise and calculated, but everyone involved understands the risks. The vibranium detector is activated as bait, sending a signal strong enough to attract Talokanian warriors. Wakanda's ships form a defensive formation, with warriors positioned strategically, ready to engage the moment the enemy appears. The sea, calm at first, begins to shift, subtle ripples hinting at the powerful force rising beneath. Within moments, Talokan's army emerges from the depths, surrounding the Wakandan vessels. The contrast is striking. Wakanda's advanced technology against the fluid, almost supernatural coordination of underwater warriors. The battle begins suddenly and violently. Talokanian fighters move with incredible speed, leaping onto ships, using water as both shield and weapon. Their haunting chants echo across the ocean, creating an unsettling psychological effect on Wakanda's forces. At the center of this chaos, Shuri, now fully suited as the Black Panther, leads the charge. Her movements are swift and precise, her combat style reflecting both her intelligence and her emotional intensity. Unlike T'Challa's calm and composed approach, Shuri fights with visible anger, channeling her pain into every strike. Alongside her, now equipped with new advanced armor, fights fiercely, reclaiming her identity as a protector of Wakanda. Commands the Jabari warriors, bringing raw strength and courage to the battlefield. Meanwhile, takes to the skies in her upgraded suit. Though still inexperienced compared to seasoned warriors, she proves her worth through quick thinking and adaptability. She provides aerial support, targeting Talokanian fighters and helping maintain balance in a battle that constantly shifts between land, sea, and air. Her presence symbolizes a new generation of heroes, imperfect but determined. The fight intensifies as Namor himself rises from the ocean. His arrival changes the entire dynamic of the battle. Stronger, faster, and nearly unstoppable in water, he attacks with overwhelming force. However, Shuri's plan begins to take effect. Using advanced technology, Wakanda manages to isolate Namor from the ocean, drawing him away from his source of strength and into a specialized aircraft designed to weaken him. Inside this confined environment, the final confrontation between Shuri and Namor begins. Without access to water, Namor's powers begin to diminish, but he remains a formidable opponent. The fight is brutal and personal. Shuri attacks with relentless intensity, driven by the memory of her mother's death. Every strike she lands carries not just physical force, but emotional weight. Namor, though weakened, does not back down. He counters with equal determination, reminding Shuri that he is fighting for his people just as she is. Their battle becomes more than just a physical confrontation. It is a clash of ideologies, pain, and responsibility. Both have lost family. Both carry the burden of leadership, yet their choices define them in different ways. At one critical moment, Shuri gains the upper hand. She manages to severely weaken Namor, bringing him to the edge of defeat. Standing over him, she has the chance to end his life and avenge her mother. This is the moment where everything comes together. The grief, the anger, the lessons from her journey, and even the haunting words from the ancestral plane. For a brief moment, it seems like Shuri will choose vengeance. Her expression reflects the internal battle raging within her. But then, something shifts. She remembers her mother's strength, her brother's compassion, and the values Wakanda stands for. In that moment of clarity, Shuri makes a different choice. Instead of killing Namor, she spares him. This decision becomes the true turning point of the story. By choosing mercy over revenge, Shuri breaks the cycle of violence that threatened to consume both Wakanda and Talokan. She offers Namor a chance, not as an enemy, but as a potential ally. Namor, recognizing both her strength and her restraint, accepts defeat. Though he does not surrender in the traditional sense, he agrees to a truce, understanding that continued war would only lead to mutual destruction. Back on the ocean, the battle comes to an end as both sides retreat. Wakanda stands victorious, but not without cost. The loss of Queen Ramonda still weighs heavily, and the scars of the conflict remain. However, there is also a sense of resolution. Wakanda has proven its strength not just through power, but through its ability to choose a better path. Concludes with the immediate aftermath of the battle. The war has been stopped, but its impact will shape the future of both nations. Shuri's journey, however, is not yet complete. She has made a crucial choice, but now she must live with it and learn what it truly means to be the Black Panther. In the quiet aftermath of the ocean battle, a heavy silence settles over Wakanda. The war has ended, but the emotional weight of everything that has happened continues to linger. Returns home not as the same person who left, but as someone transformed by loss, anger, and ultimately by choice. Her decision to spare has not only prevented further destruction, but has also redefined what it means to be the Black Panther in this new era. Back in Wakanda, the people begin the slow process of rebuilding. The damage caused by the Talokan attack is visible across the capital, flooded structures, broken defenses, and a lingering sense of vulnerability. Yet, alongside this destruction is resilience. Wakandans come together to restore their home, honoring both and King T'Challa through unity and strength. Their loss is deeply personal for everyone, not just for Shuri, and the nation mourns while also looking toward the future. Shuri, however, struggles internally. Although she chose mercy in the final moment, the anger she felt has not completely disappeared. She spends long hours alone, reflecting on her journey, her failure to save her brother, the loss of her mother, and the responsibility she now carries. Being the Black Panther is no longer just about power. It is about leadership, balance, and emotional strength. For Shuri, this realization is both empowering and overwhelming. Meanwhile, within Talokan, Namor returns to his people. Though he survived, he has been defeated in a way he did not expect, not through brute force, but through Shuri's compassion. His advisors question the outcome, wondering why he chose to accept a truce instead of continuing the fight. Namor, however, sees the bigger picture. He understands that Wakanda is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a nation that could one day become a powerful ally. In a subtle but important moment, he hints that this alliance may benefit Talokan in the future, especially as the surface world continues to grow more aggressive. Back in Wakanda, the leadership structure begins to stabilize. emerges as a strong and respected figure among the people. His wisdom and calm approach during the crisis have earned him trust, and he plays a key role in guiding Wakanda forward during this transitional period. His presence also provides Shuri with support, reminding her that she does not have to carry the burden alone. Having regained her purpose during the battle, continues to serve Wakanda with renewed determination. Though she no longer holds her previous title, she has found a deeper sense of identity, one that is not tied to rank, but to her unwavering loyalty and courage. Her journey becomes a symbol of redemption and resilience, showing that true strength comes from within. At the same time, prepares to return home. Her experience in Wakanda has changed her completely. She arrived as a brilliant but somewhat reckless inventor, but she leaves as someone who understands the weight of her creations and the impact they can have on the world. Before she departs, Shuri ensures that Riri's vibranium detecting technology is dismantled, preventing it from falling into the wrong hands. This decision reflects Wakanda's ongoing commitment to protecting its resources and maintaining balance in a world that constantly seeks power. One of the most important aspects of this phase of the story is Shuri's gradual acceptance of her grief. Instead of running from her pain or turning it into anger, she begins to face it directly. She realizes that loss is not something to overcome, but something to carry. With strength and understanding, this shift marks a crucial step in her evolution, not just as the Black Panther, but as a person. In a deeply emotional sequence, Shuri travels to a quiet place where she can finally allow herself to mourn. Away from the responsibilities of leadership and the expectations of others, she reflects on her memories of T'Challa and Ramonda. For the first time, she lets herself feel the full weight of her loss, shedding the emotional barriers she had built. This moment is not about weakness, it is about healing. It shows that true strength lies in acknowledging pain and moving forward with it. As Wakanda moves toward a new beginning, the question of leadership remains. The throne, once held by T'Challa and then guided by Ramonda, now stands as a symbol of continuity and change. Shuri, though the Black Panther, is not driven by a desire to rule in the traditional sense. Her strengths lie in innovation, protection, and vision, rather than political leadership. This creates an interesting dynamic for Wakanda's future, where leadership may take on a more collaborative form. The relationship between Wakanda and Talokan also enters a new phase. While the truce holds, there is an understanding that both nations must remain cautious. Trust is not built overnight, especially after such a devastating conflict. However, the possibility of cooperation exists, and both Shuri and Namor recognize its importance. In a world where powerful nations continue to seek vibranium, unity between Wakanda and Talokan could become a crucial factor in maintaining balance. Focuses heavily on reflection, healing, and the rebuilding of identity. The action of the previous chapters gives way to emotional depth, allowing characters to process what they have been through. Shuri's journey in particular becomes more introspective, as she begins to understand what it truly means to carry the legacy of the Black Panther. By the end of this, the immediate conflict has been resolved, but the story's deeper themes continue to unfold. Wakanda is no longer the same nation it once was. It has faced loss, vulnerability, and transformation. Yet, through all of this, it has also discovered new strength. Shuri stands at the center of this new era, not as a perfect leader, but as one who is learning, evolving, and choosing a path guided by both heart and mind. As Wakanda continues to rebuild and heal, a quiet but meaningful shift begins to take place within its people and leadership. The immediate threat from Talokan has subsided, yet the world outside has not grown any less dangerous. Nations that once feared Wakanda are now more curious and more desperate than ever to understand and access vibranium. This creates a new kind of tension, one that is less visible than war, but equally threatening in the long run. At the center of all of this stands Shuri, who is still learning how to balance her role as the Black Panther with the expectations placed upon her as a member of the royal family. Unlike her brother, Shuri does not naturally gravitate toward political leadership. Her strength lies in innovation, strategy, and protection rather than diplomacy. This creates an evolving dynamic in Wakanda's leadership structure, increasingly becomes a stabilizing force in governance, offering wisdom and a grounded perspective that resonates with the people. His presence helps fill the void left by the loss of both T'Challa and, even as Shuri continues to define her own role during this period, Shuri begins to reconnect with the cultural and spiritual traditions she once distanced herself from. Her earlier reliance solely on science had left little room for belief in the ancestral plane or the deeper meaning behind Wakandan rituals. However, her experience after consuming the heart-shaped herb, particularly her encounter with, forces her to reconsider these aspects of her identity. She realizes that Wakanda's strength has always come from the harmony between tradition and innovation, not the rejection of one for the other. This realization begins to influence her actions. Shuri starts engaging more with the elders and spiritual leaders of Wakanda, seeking understanding rather than dismissing their perspectives. Though she may not fully embrace everything, she learns to respect the balance that has guided her people for generations. This internal growth marks an important stage in her journey, as she moves away from being driven purely by intellect or emotion, and toward a more integrated sense of self. At the same time, Wakanda's relationship with the outside world becomes more complicated. International powers, aware of the recent conflict and the existence of Talokan, begin to reassess their strategies. Some see Wakanda as weakened, while others view it as even more dangerous than before. Diplomatic channels reopen, but they are filled with caution and underlying tension. Wakanda must now navigate not only its own recovery, but also the shifting perceptions of the global community. Continues to play a vital role during this time. Having redefined her identity beyond her former title, she becomes a symbol of adaptability and strength. Her presence reassures the people of Wakanda that their protectors remain steadfast, regardless of titles or positions. She also serves as a bridge between tradition and change, supporting Shuri while maintaining the discipline and values that have always defined the Dora Milaje. Meanwhile, far beneath the ocean, Riri reflects on the outcome of the conflict. Though he agreed to a truce, his perspective remains complex. He does not fully trust the surface world, nor does he completely align himself with Wakanda. However, he recognizes the importance of Shuri's decision to spare him. In his eyes, this act of mercy is both a strength and a potential vulnerability. Namor begins to consider how this relationship might evolve, understanding that the future may require cooperation or confrontation, depending on how events unfold. Back in Wakanda, Shuri takes on a more active role as the Black Panther. She participates in missions that ensure the nation's security, responding to threats before they can escalate. Her approach is different from that of her predecessors. She relies heavily on technology, strategy, and precision, often finding solutions that minimize unnecessary conflict. This reflects her desire to avoid repeating the cycle of violence that nearly consumed both Wakanda and Talokan. Despite these advancements, Shuri's journey is not without challenges. There are moments when doubt creeps in questions about whether she made the right choices, whether she is truly worthy of the mantle she carries. These moments of vulnerability add depth to her character, showing that leadership is not about certainty, but about the courage to move forward despite uncertainty. The people of Wakanda, too, begin to adapt to this new era. The loss of their king and queen has changed their collective identity, but it has also strengthened their unity. Cultural traditions continue to play a vital role in this process, providing a sense of continuity and belonging. Celebrations, rituals, and shared memories help the nation heal, even as it faces an uncertain future. As this phase of the story unfolds, the focus shifts from survival to evolution. Wakanda is no longer simply reacting to threats. It is redefining its place in the world. Shuri stands at the center of this transformation, embodying both the pain of the past and the promise of the future. Her journey is no longer just about becoming the Black Panther. It is about understanding what that role truly means in a world that is constantly changing, serves as a bridge between the immediate aftermath of the conflict and the long-term future of Wakanda. It highlights the growth of its characters, the complexity of its relationships, and the challenges that lie ahead. The battles may have ended, but the story is far from over. Wakanda's true test will be how it chooses to move forward and how it balances power, responsibility, and compassion in the face of whatever comes next. As Wakanda moves further into this new era, the nation begins to redefine its identity, not just internally, but on a global scale. The world is watching closely. After the events involving the rise of the new Black Panther and the revelation of an underwater civilization led by the balance of power has permanently shifted. Wakanda is no longer seen as a hidden kingdom. It is now recognized as one of the most influential and strategically important nations on Earth. This attention brings both opportunity and danger. Shuri, now more composed and emotionally grounded than before, begins to embrace her role with greater clarity. The anger that once drove her has softened into determination, and her decisions reflect a more balanced mindset. She understands that being the Black Panther is not just about protecting Wakanda from physical threats, but also about guiding it through political and moral challenges. This realization shapes her approach as she begins participating more actively in discussions about Wakanda's global presence. One of the major developments during this time, Wakanda's cautious re-engagement with international diplomacy. Rather than isolating itself completely, Wakanda chooses to interact with the world on its own terms. These interactions are carefully controlled, ensuring that Wakanda's resources, especially vibranium, remain protected. Shuri, along with trusted advisors like, plays a key role in shaping these strategies. M'Baku's grounded perspective and understanding of people complement Shuri's analytical thinking, creating a leadership dynamic that is both practical and visionary. At the same time, Wakanda strengthens its internal systems. The damage caused by the Talokan attack has largely been repaired, but the lessons learned from that battle influence how the nation prepares for the future. Defense systems are upgraded, and new technologies are developed to handle threats that may come from both land and sea. Shuri leads many of these innovations, blending her scientific expertise with the knowledge gained from recent conflicts. Her work ensures that Wakanda is not only restored, but stronger than before. Meanwhile, the relationship between Wakanda and Talokan remains complex. While the truce holds, there is an unspoken tension between the two nations. Both understand that their alliance is fragile, built more on mutual necessity than trust. Despite this, there are subtle signs of progress. Communication channels, though limited, remain open, and both sides avoid actions that could reignite conflict. Shuri and Namor, in particular, share a mutual respect born from their confrontation. They recognize each other as leaders who have faced loss and made difficult choices. Within Talokan, Namor continues to reflect on the future of his people. His decision to accept Shuri's mercy has influenced how he approaches leadership. While he remains fiercely protective and cautious, he also begins to consider the possibility that cooperation with Wakanda could offer new opportunities for survival in a changing world. However, he never fully abandons his belief that the surface world is dangerous, and he remains prepared to defend Talokan at any cost. Back in Wakanda takes on a more adaptive role in protecting the nation. Without the constraints of her former title, she becomes more flexible in her approach, working alongside different groups and contributing wherever she is needed most. Her experience and discipline continue to make her one of Wakanda's most reliable defenders, and her journey inspires others to find strength beyond traditional roles. Another important aspect of this phase is the continued influence of, though she has returned to her own life, her connection to Wakanda remains strong. The experience has shaped her understanding of responsibility, and she carries those lessons into her future as a young innovator and hero. Her story represents the broader impact Wakanda has on the world, not just as a nation, but as a source of inspiration and change. As time passes, Shuri begins to focus more on the emotional and cultural restoration of Wakanda. She recognizes that rebuilding structures is only part of the healing process. Restoring the spirit of the people is equally important. Cultural events, traditions, and shared experiences become central to this effort. These moments help unite the nation, reminding everyone of who they are and what they stand for. Shuri herself undergoes a quiet but profound transformation during this time. She no longer sees herself as someone living in the shadow of her brother. Instead, she embraces her individuality, understanding that her way of being the Black Panther does not need to mirror his. This acceptance allows her to lead with authenticity, combining compassion, intelligence, and strength in a way that is uniquely her own. The legacy of T'Challa continues to guide her decisions. Rather than being a source of pressure, their memory becomes a source of strength. Shuri carries their lessons forward, ensuring that Wakanda's future honors its past while also evolving to meet new challenges. Highlights a period of stabilization and growth. The immediate conflicts have been resolved, but the world remains uncertain. Wakanda stands at a crossroads, stronger than before, yet more exposed to global dynamics. Shuri's leadership, still developing, becomes the key to navigating this complex landscape. As this part comes to a close, there is a sense that Wakanda has entered a new Chapter 1, defined not by isolation or reaction, but by intentional progress. The challenges ahead are still unknown, but the foundation has been set. With Shuri as the Black Panther and a united nation behind her, Wakanda is ready to face whatever the future holds, guided by the lessons of its past and the strength of its people. As Wakanda settles into a fragile but forward-moving peace, the deeper consequences of the recent conflict begin to surface in more subtle and complex ways. The nation may have rebuilt its cities and defenses, but the psychological and political impact of everything that has happened continues to shape its future. At the center of this evolving reality stands who now carries the mantle of the Black Panther, not just as a protector, but as a symbol of change in a world that is rapidly transforming. One of the most significant developments during this period is the growing awareness among global powers that Wakanda is no longer isolated. The revelation of Talokan, led by, has intensified international interest in vibranium. Governments and secret organizations begin quietly strategizing, seeking ways to either access Wakanda's resources or counter its influence. While no direct attack occurs, the tension is palpable, creating an atmosphere of constant vigilance. Wakanda must now operate with understanding that threats may not always come openly. They may emerge through espionage, alliances, or hidden agendas. Shuri becomes increasingly aware of these shifting dynamics. Unlike earlier in her journey, where she reacted emotionally to immediate threats, she now adopts a more strategic perspective. She begins working closely with Wakanda's intelligence networks, ensuring that potential dangers are identified before they escalate. This marks a significant evolution in her leadership style. She is no longer just responding to crises, but actively shaping the conditions that prevent them. At the same time, Shuri continues to refine the role of the Black Panther in this new era. She understands that the symbol must evolve along with the world. The Black Panther is not only a warrior, but also a guardian of balance, someone who must protect Wakanda while also considering its place within the global community. This realization leads her to approach conflicts with a focus on prevention and diplomacy rather than immediate confrontation. However, she remains fully prepared to act when necessary, knowing that strength is still a crucial part of maintaining peace. Within Wakanda, the people begin to adapt to these changes. The loss of both and T'Challa has reshaped the nation's identity, but it has also created space for new voices and perspectives. Younger generations, inspired by Shuri's journey, begin to see leadership as something dynamic rather than fixed. This cultural shift encourages innovation, collaboration, and a broader sense of responsibility among Wakandans. Continues to play a crucial role during this time. His presence in the leadership structure provides stability and continuity, balancing Shuri's forward-thinking approach with a deep respect for tradition. Together, they form a partnership that reflects the dual nature of Wakanda itself, rooted in history, but always looking toward the future. M'Baku's influence ensures that decisions are grounded in the values that have sustained Wakanda for generations, while Shuri's vision pushes the nation to evolve. Meanwhile, the connection between Wakanda and Talokan remains one of cautious distance. Although the truce established after the battle still holds, neither side fully trusts the other. Communication is limited but purposeful, with both nations recognizing the importance of maintaining stability. Namor, in particular, remains a complex figure. While he has chosen not to pursue further conflict, his underlying distrust of the surface world has not disappeared. Instead, it has become more measured, guiding his actions as he prepares for whatever the future may bring. Namor's perspective adds an important layer to the story's broader themes. He sees the world through the lens of survival, shaped by generations of struggle and isolation. His willingness to consider cooperation with Wakanda does not come from optimism, but from strategic necessity. This contrasts with Shuri's evolving outlook, which is beginning to embrace the possibility of balance rather than constant conflict. Their relationship, though distant, represents a fragile bridge between two powerful civilizations, one that could either strengthen over time or collapse under pressure. Back in Wakanda, Shuri's personal journey continues to unfold. Although she has grown significantly, moments of doubt still surface. The weight of her decisions, especially her choice to spare Namor, occasionally lingers in her mind. She understands that mercy can be both a strength and a risk, and she must constantly evaluate the consequences of her actions. These reflections do not weaken her. Instead, they deepen her understanding of leadership, reminding her that every choice carries both immediate and long-term implications. As part of her growth, Shuri also begins to embrace a more holistic view of Wakanda's future. She invests time in projects that go beyond defense and technology, focusing on education, cultural preservation, and the well-being of her people. This broader perspective reflects her realization that true strength lies not only in power, but in the ability to nurture and sustain a thriving society. The influence of can still be felt, even from afar. Her journey serves as a reminder of how Wakanda's actions ripple outward into the world. The connections formed during the conflict continue to shape the paths of individuals and nations alike, highlighting the interconnected nature of this new reality. As this phase of the story progresses, the focus shifts from immediate resolution to long-term stability. Wakanda is no longer defined solely by its battles, but by how it chooses to move forward in a complex and unpredictable world. Shuri stands as a central figure in this transformation, embodying the balance between tradition and change, strength and compassion, science and spirit. Delves into the deeper layers of the story, exploring how the events of the film continue to influence the characters and their world even after the main conflict has ended. It emphasizes that the true impact of these events is of Wakanda and its place in the world. The journey is no longer about survival alone, but about defining what kind of legacy Wakanda will leave behind. As Wakanda continues to evolve after the conflict, the story moves into a deeply reflective and meaningful phase where legacy, identity, and the future of leadership take center stage. Now fully established as the Black Panther, begins to understand that her journey is not just about protecting Wakanda from external threats, but about shaping what Wakanda will become in the years ahead. The battles she has fought, both external and internal, have transformed her, but they have also left her with questions about purpose, responsibility, and the meaning of legacy. In this stage, Shuri makes a quiet yet powerful decision to step away temporarily from the constant demands of leadership, not out of weakness, but out of a need for clarity and healing. She travels away from Wakanda to a place where she can reconnect with herself, without the weight of expectations. This journey represents something deeply important: her willingness to pause and reflect rather than rush forward, without understanding her own emotions. For someone who once avoided dealing with grief, this marks a profound shift in her character. During this time of solitude, Shuri confronts her memories of both and T'Challa. Instead of suppressing her pain, she allows herself to fully experience it. She recalls moments of love, guidance, and strength, recognizing how much of who she is has been shaped by them. This process becomes a form of healing, helping her transform grief into something that can guide her rather than control her. It is here that she begins to truly accept her role, not as a replacement for T'Challa, but as a continuation of Wakanda's legacy in her own unique way. Back in Wakanda, the nation continues to move forward under the guidance of its leaders, takes on a more prominent role in governance, representing stability and strength during Shuri's absence. His leadership reflects a grounded, people-focused approach, ensuring that Wakanda remains united and secure. This dynamic highlights an important shift in Wakanda's structure. Leadership is no longer centered on a single figure, but shared among those who bring different strengths to the table. Meanwhile, the relationship between Wakanda and Talokan remains quietly significant, continues to observe the surface world, aware that future conflicts are inevitable. However, his perspective on Wakanda has changed. He recognizes Shuri's decision to spare him as a sign of strength, and this influences how he positions Talokan moving forward. Rather than immediate aggression, he adopts a more strategic stance, understanding that patience and timing will play a crucial role in protecting his people. This evolving relationship hints at a future where Wakanda and Talokan could either stand together or find themselves on opposing sides once again. The uncertainty of this dynamic adds depth to the story, showing that peace is not a fixed state but an ongoing process that requires effort, understanding, and sometimes difficult compromises. One of the most emotional and significant moments of this phase comes when Shuri finally performs the ritual she had been avoiding, the ceremonial burning of her funeral garments. Earlier in the story, she was unable to let go of her grief, refusing to accept the finality of her losses. Now, however, she approaches this moment with a different mindset. As she burns the garments, she symbolically releases the pain she has been holding on to. This act does not erase her grief, but it allows her to move forward with it in a healthier way. During this moment, Shuri experiences a vision or memory of T'Challa, not as a source of sadness, but as a reminder of love, guidance, and legacy. This scene is quiet, deeply emotional, and profoundly meaningful. It marks the completion of her emotional journey, showing that she has finally found a balance between honoring the past and embracing the future. At the same time, another important revelation takes place through. It is revealed that she has been raising T'Challa's son in secret, away from the pressures of Wakandan royalty. This child, also named T'Challa, represents the continuation of the royal bloodline and the enduring legacy of the Black Panther. The decision to keep him hidden was made to allow him a chance at a normal life, free from the expectations that come with his heritage. When Shuri meets the child, it becomes a deeply emotional and symbolic moment. She sees not just the future of Wakanda, but a living connection to her brother. This encounter reinforces the idea that legacy is not only about power or leadership, but about the values and relationships that are passed down through generations. It also gives Shuri a sense of peace, knowing that T'Challa's legacy will continue in a new and meaningful way. As Shuri prepares to return to Wakanda, she does so with a renewed sense of purpose. She is no longer driven by anger or grief, but by understanding and clarity. She accepts that being the Black Panther means more than fighting. It means guiding, protecting, and inspiring. Her journey has transformed her into a leader who embodies both strength and compassion, ready to face whatever challenges the future may bring. Serves as a powerful conclusion to the emotional and thematic arcs of the story. It ties together the threads of loss, healing, and legacy, showing how the characters have grown and how their experiences will shape the future. Wakanda stands stronger, not because it avoided hardship, but because it endured it and emerged with a deeper understanding of itself. The story, while reaching a sense of closure, also opens the door to new possibilities. The presence of a new generation, the evolving relationships between nations, and the continued growth of its characters all point toward a future that is both uncertain and full of potential. In the end, Wakanda is not just a place, it is an idea, a legacy, and a symbol of resilience that will continue to endure. As the story of No reaches its final phase, everything comes together in a way that emphasizes legacy, continuity, and the quiet strength of moving forward. After her time of reflection and healing, returns to Wakanda not just as the Black Panther, but as someone who has fully embraced both her pain and her purpose. She is no longer the grieving sister trying to fix what was lost, nor the angry warrior seeking revenge. She has become a balanced leader, one who understands that true strength lies in wisdom, compassion, and responsibility. Upon her return, Wakanda welcomes her not with grand celebration, but with a sense of unity and quiet respect. The nation has changed, and so has its understanding of leadership. Who has been guiding the people in her absence stands not as a rival, but as a trusted ally. In a powerful and symbolic moment, he appears at the ceremonial challenge for the throne, representing the Jabari tribe and the strength of Wakanda's traditions. However, the outcome is not framed as a conflict, but as a continuation of Wakanda's evolving system, one where leadership is shared, respected, and guided by collective wisdom rather than dominance. Shuri's role becomes more clearly defined. While she carries the mantle of the Black Panther, her focus is not on ruling from the throne in the traditional sense. Instead, she embraces a path that allows her to protect Wakanda, innovate for its future, and guide its direction alongside other leaders. This reflects a major shift in Wakanda's identity, from a monarchy centered on a single figure to a more dynamic and collaborative form of governance. It is a subtle but important evolution, showing that even the strongest traditions can adapt when necessary. Meanwhile, beneath the ocean, continues to observe the surface world with careful calculation. His agreement with Wakanda has not weakened his resolve. Rather, it has given him time to think strategically. In a revealing moment with his people, he explains that aligning with Wakanda, even indirectly, may serve Talokan's long-term interests. He understands that the surface world will eventually turn its attention toward Wakanda again, and when that happens, Talokan's position could become even more significant. This perspective reinforces the idea that peace between the two nations is not just about trust, but about mutual benefit and survival. Back in Wakanda, the influence of recent events continues to shape the nation's direction. The people, inspired by Shuri's journey, begin to see strength not just in power, but in resilience and unity. Cultural traditions remain strong, but they are now accompanied by a greater openness to change and innovation. Wakanda's identity becomes more fluid, still rooted in its history, but willing to evolve in response to the world around it. Continues to serve as a symbol of unwavering loyalty and adaptability. Her journey from losing her title to rediscovering her purpose reflects the broader theme of transformation that runs throughout the story. She proves that identity is not defined by position, but by action and character. Her presence reassures the people of Wakanda that their protectors remain strong, regardless of the challenges they face. The legacy of T'Challa remains a guiding force. Their influence is felt not through direct action, but through the values they instilled in those who carry their memory forward. Shuri, in particular, embodies this legacy. She has taken the lessons of her past, both the successes and the failures, and transformed them into a new vision for Wakanda's future. One of the most meaningful aspects of this final chapter is the continued presence of T'Challa's son. Introduced through the child represents hope, continuity, and the enduring nature of legacy. Though still young, he symbolizes the future of our Wakanda and the possibility of a new generation that will carry forward the ideals of the Black Panther. His existence also provides Shuri with a sense of peace, knowing that her brother's legacy will live on in a way that is both personal and profound. As the story draws to a close, Wakanda stands stronger, not because it avoided hardship, but because it faced it and grew from it. The nation has endured loss, conflict, and transformation, and through all of it, it has discovered a deeper understanding of itself. Shuri stands at the center of this new era, not as a perfect leader, but as one who is willing to learn, adapt, and guide with both strength and compassion. The final moments emphasize a sense of continuity rather than conclusion. The challenges facing Wakanda and the world are far from over, but there is confidence that they will be met with resilience and wisdom. The relationship with Talokan remains an open thread. filled with both potential and uncertainty. The global interest in vibranium continues to pose a threat, ensuring that Wakanda must remain vigilant. In the end, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is not just a story about superheroes or battles, it is a story about loss, healing, identity, and the power of legacy. It shows that even in the face of great tragedy, there is always a path forward. Through Shuri's journey, the film reminds us that strength is not defined by the absence of pain, but by the ability to rise above it and use it to create something meaningful. Brings the story to a thoughtful and emotionally satisfying conclusion, tying together the arcs of its characters while leaving room for the future. Wakanda moves forward, guided by its past, but not bound by it, ready to face whatever comes next with courage, unity, and an enduring spirit. The ending of film is not built around a loud conclusion, but around a quiet, emotional resolution that reflects everything the story has explored: loss, healing, responsibility, and legacy. As Wakanda steps into a new era, the focus shifts away from war and conflict and instead centers on what it truly means to move forward after pain. Stands as the heart of this transformation, no longer defined by grief or anger, but by understanding and acceptance. After returning from her journey of reflection, Shuri carries a calm strength that contrasts sharply with the person she was at the beginning of the story, where once she was consumed by the need to fix everything through science or react through emotion. She now understands that some things cannot be undone, and that true growth comes from learning how to live with those realities. Her decision to spare continues to shape the world around her, serving as a reminder that power does not always need to end in destruction. Instead, it can create space for peace, even if that peace is fragile. Wakanda itself reflects this change. The nation is no longer isolated in the same way it once was, nor is it entirely open to the world. It exists in a careful balance, protecting its resources while acknowledging that it is part of a larger global system. This balance becomes one of the most important themes of the ending: strength combined with awareness, tradition combined with progress. Under Shuri's influence, Wakanda begins to embrace a future that is not limited by fear, but guided by purpose. At the same time, the emotional core of the story reaches its most powerful moment through Shuri's final act of letting go. The ritual of burning her funeral garments is not just symbolic, it is deeply personal. Earlier, she refused to perform this ritual because it meant accepting the loss of her brother and her mother. Now she chooses to face that reality. As the flames rise, they represent more than just grief. They represent release, transformation, and the beginning of something new. In that moment, Shuri allows herself to remember T'Challa not with pain, but with love, and this shift changes everything. Her memory of T'Challa is not shown as a moment of sorrow, but as a moment of peace. It reminds her and the audience that legacy is not about holding on to the past, but about carrying its meaning forward. This realization becomes the foundation of her identity as the Black Panther. She is not replacing T'Challa. She is continuing what he stood for in her own way. Another crucial part of the ending is the revelation of T'Challa's son, introduced through B. This moment is quiet, almost gentle, but it carries immense significance. The child represents continuity, not just of a bloodline, but of ideals, values, and hope. For Shuri, meeting him is both emotional and reassuring. It shows her that her brother's legacy is not gone. It is simply evolving into a new form. This revelation also adds a deeper layer to the story's message. It suggests that the future is not something to fear, even after great loss. Instead, it is something to nurture and protect. The presence of this new generation reminds everyone that life continues, and with it comes the opportunity to build something better. Meanwhile, beneath the ocean, he reflects on the outcome of the conflict. His acceptance of peace is not a sign of weakness, but of strategy and understanding. He recognizes that Wakanda is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a force that could shape the future alongside Talokan. However, his cautious nature remains, reminding us that this peace is not guaranteed to last forever. It is a pause, a moment of balance in a world that is constantly shifting. Back in Wakanda, the people begin to fully embrace this new chapter. The loss of their king and queen has changed them, but it has also strengthened their unity. Cultural traditions continue to play a vital role, grounding them in their identity while allowing them to move forward. The nation no longer looks only to the past for guidance. It looks to the future with confidence. Shuri's final position in this ending is not just as a hero, but as a symbol of growth. She represents the idea that strength is not about being unbreakable, but about being able to rebuild after being broken. Her journey from denial to anger, from anger to understanding, and from understanding to acceptance mirrors the journey of Wakanda itself. The ending also leaves the door open for what comes next. The world is still changing, and Wakanda's place within it will continue to evolve. The relationship with Talokan, the interest of global powers in vibranium, and the emergence of new heroes all suggest that the story is far from over. However, unlike before, Wakanda is now prepared, not just with strength, but with wisdom. In the final sense, Black Panther Wakanda Forever closes not with a definitive end, but with a sense of continuation. It reminds us that stories do not truly end. They grow, change, and carry forward into the future. Through Shuri, through the legacy of T'Challa, and through the strength of Wakanda, the story becomes something larger than any single character or event. This ending is powerful because it is human. It shows that even in a world of superheroes, the most important battles are often emotional ones, the battles to heal, to forgive, and to move forward. And in winning those battles, Shuri not only becomes the Black Panther, she becomes something even greater, a true leader, shaped by loss, guided by love, and ready to protect the future of Wakanda, no matter what challenges lie ahead. Even after the emotional and thematic conclusion of, the story leaves behind an important epilogue-like layer that reflects on the future, legacy, and the quiet continuation of life beyond major events. This final extension is less about action and more about meaning. What remains after everything has changed, and how the characters carry those changes forward, now fully settled into her identity as the Black Panther, represents a new kind of leadership, one that is not rooted in tradition alone, but in adaptation, empathy, and vision. Wakanda as a nation stands in a position unlike any before. It has faced loss, survived war, and discovered that even the strongest civilizations are not immune to vulnerability. Yet instead of weakening, this realization has made Wakanda wiser. The people no longer see strength as something absolute, but as something that must be maintained through unity, awareness, and growth. This subtle shift in mindset becomes one of the most important outcomes of the entire story. Shuri's approach to leadership reflects this transformation. She does not try to rule as her brother did, nor does she attempt to replace what was lost. Instead, she leads in her own way, through innovation, protection, and thoughtful decision-making. She understands that Wakanda's future depends not only on its power, but on how that power is used. Her journey has taught her that leadership is not about control, but about responsibility. At the same time, the legacy of T'Challa continues to echo quietly through every part of Wakanda. His influence is no longer seen through direct action, but through the values he left behind: honor, compassion, and the belief that strength should be used to uplift others. This legacy finds its most meaningful continuation in the presence of his son, whose existence represents the bridge between past and future. Though still young, he symbolizes hope and the promise that Wakanda's story will continue through a new generation. Beyond Wakanda, the world remains uncertain. Global powers are still aware of vibranium, and the existence of Talokan has added a new layer of complexity to international dynamics. Remains a powerful figure, one whose decisions could shape future conflicts or alliances. His understanding with Wakanda is stable for now, but it exists in a delicate balance, one that could shift depending on how the world evolves. This uncertainty is important because it reinforces one of the film's central ideas. Peace is not permanent, and strength must always be accompanied by readiness. Wakanda, however, is now better prepared, not just technologically, but emotionally and strategically. It has learned from its losses, and those lessons have become part of its foundation. As the story settles into this epilogue phase, there is a sense of calm that contrasts with the intensity of earlier events. It is not the calm of finality, but of continuation. Life moves forward. People grow. Nations adapt. The story does not end. It simply reaches a point where its characters are ready for whatever comes next. For Shuri, this means embracing both her past and her future. She carries the memory of her family, the lessons of her journey, and the responsibility of her role with a sense of balance that was once missing. She is no longer defined by what she lost, but by what she has chosen to become. In this way, her story becomes not just one of survival, but of transformation. Serves as a reflective closing layer, emphasizing that the true impact of the story lies not in its battles, but in its growth. Wakanda moves forward as a nation that has changed, yet remains true to its core. And at the center of it all stands Shuri, the Black Panther, ready to protect, to lead, and to carry the legacy of Wakanda into a future that is still being written. The film Black Panther, Wakanda Forever stands as one of the most emotional and thematically layered entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Directed by Ryan Coogler, the movie carries a heavy responsibility, not just to continue the story of Wakanda, but to honor the legacy of Chadwick Boseman, whose absence deeply shapes the narrative. From the very beginning, the film establishes a tone that is different from most superhero movies. Instead of jumping directly into action, it opens with grief, loss, and silence, setting a mature and emotional foundation that carries throughout the entire story. At its core, the story revolves around Shuri, who is struggling with the loss of her brother, King T'Challa. Unlike typical superhero arcs, this film takes time to explore grief in a realistic and grounded way. Shuri's journey is not just about becoming the next Black Panther. It is about dealing with pain, anger, denial, and eventually acceptance. This emotional depth becomes the strongest pillar of the film, making it stand out from standard action-driven Marvel projects. The introduction of Namor and the hidden underwater kingdom of Talokan adds a powerful layer to the narrative. Namor is not portrayed as a simple villain. Instead, he is presented as a complex anti-hero whose motivations are rooted in protecting his people from the dangers of the surface world. This makes the conflict between Wakanda and Talokan feel morally balanced, where both sides have valid reasons for their actions. This kind of storytelling adds maturity to the film and makes the audience think beyond the usual good versus evil formula. From a storytelling perspective, the pacing of the movie is slower compared to typical MCU films, but this works in its favor. The film takes its time to build emotional connections, develop characters, and establish stakes. While some viewers may find this pacing slightly stretched, it ultimately helps in creating a deeper and more meaningful narrative experience. Visually, the film is stunning right from the start. Wakanda is once again portrayed as a technologically advanced yet culturally rich nation, while Talokan introduces a completely new aesthetic inspired by Mesoamerican culture. The contrast between these two worlds is beautifully captured, making the film visually engaging and immersive. The performances are another major highlight. Letitia Wright delivers a powerful performance as Shuri, capturing her emotional struggles and gradual transformation with authenticity. Angela Bassett as Queen Ramonda brings incredible strength and depth, delivering some of the most impactful scenes in the film. Meanwhile, Tenoch Huerta as Namor commands attention with his calm yet intimidating presence, making him one of the most memorable antagonists in recent Marvel films. Another key aspect of the film is its music and background score. Composed by Ludwig Göransson, the soundtrack perfectly complements the emotional tone of the story, blending African and Mesoamerican influences to create a unique and powerful auditory experience. The music not only enhances dramatic moments, but also adds cultural depth to the film. Overall, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever succeeds as both a tribute and a continuation. It respects the legacy of the original film while carving its own identity through emotional storytelling, strong performances, and meaningful themes. Rather than focusing solely on spectacle, the film prioritizes character development and emotional resonance, making it one of the more mature and thoughtful entries in the MCU. This first part establishes the foundation of the film's review, its emotional core, story direction, and overall impact. In the next part, we will go deeper into the story structure and character development, analyzing how the narrative unfolds and how each major character contributes to the film's depth. In Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the story structure is carefully designed to balance emotional storytelling with large-scale world-building, and this is where the film truly distinguishes itself from typical superhero narratives. Instead of following a fast-paced, action-heavy structure, the film unfolds in layers: grief, conflict, escalation, and resolution, each phase deeply tied to character development. This layered storytelling approach allows the audience to connect with the characters on a personal level while still experiencing the scale of a global conflict. At the heart of the story is Shuri, whose character arc is one of the most compelling in the MCU. In the beginning, she is defined by denial and frustration. As a scientist, she struggles with the idea that something like death cannot be solved or reversed. This internal conflict becomes a key driver of her behavior. She distances herself from tradition, avoids emotional closure, and channels her pain into logic and technology. This makes her arc feel grounded and relatable. Avoidance rather than acceptance. Parallel to Shuri's journey is the powerful presence of Queen Ramonda, who represents strength, dignity, and leadership under pressure. Her character adds emotional weight to the narrative, especially in scenes where she confronts global powers or deals with the internal struggles of Wakanda. Her speech at the United Nations is a standout moment, showcasing not only her authority but also Wakanda's position in the world. She becomes the emotional backbone of the story, and her eventual fate plays a crucial role in pushing Shuri toward transformation. Another significant character arc is that of Okoye. Her journey explores identity beyond duty. When she loses her title as General of the Dora Milaje, it creates a personal crisis for her. For someone who has defined herself through loyalty and service, losing that role forces her to rediscover who she is without it. This arc is subtle but meaningful, showing that true strength is not tied to titles or positions, but to character and purpose. The introduction of Riri Williams adds a fresh dynamic to the story. As a young genius and the creator of the vibranium detecting machine, she becomes the catalyst for the central conflict. However, her role goes beyond just being a plot device. She represents a new generation, intelligent, bold, and imperfect. Her interactions with Shuri bring moments of lightness and contrast, helping to balance the film's heavier emotional tone. At the same time, her presence raises important questions about technology, responsibility, and how innovation can impact the world in unexpected ways. The antagonist, Namor, is one of the most well-developed characters in the film. His backstory, rooted in history and survival, gives depth to his motivations. He is not driven by greed or power, but by a genuine desire to protect his people. This makes him a morally complex figure, someone the audience can understand even if they do not fully agree with his actions. His interactions with Shuri are particularly important, as they highlight the similarities between them. Both are leaders shaped by loss. Both are fiercely protective of their people, and both are forced to make difficult choices. From a structural standpoint, the film divides its narrative into clear phases. The first phase focuses on grief and loss, setting the emotional tone. The second phase introduces conflict, through the vibranium detector and Namor's emergence. The third phase escalates this conflict into direct confrontation, leading to the attack on Wakanda. Finally, the last phase moves toward resolution, focusing on Shuri's transformation and the eventual truce between Wakanda and Talokan. One of the strengths of this structure is how it allows each character to grow naturally within the story. No arc feels rushed or forced. Instead, every development is given time to breathe, making the emotional moments more impactful. However, this also contributes to one of the film's criticisms, the pacing. Some viewers may feel that certain sections are slower than necessary, especially in the middle portion. But for those who appreciate character-driven storytelling, this slower pace becomes a strength rather than a. The film also does an excellent job of interweaving personal and political stakes. Wakanda is not just dealing with internal grief, but also with external pressure from the world. This dual conflict adds depth to the narrative, making it feel larger and more realistic. It shows that leadership is not just about personal strength, but about navigating complex situations that affect entire nations. Overall, the story structure and character development in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever are among its strongest elements. The film prioritizes emotional depth and meaningful arcs over constant action, creating a narrative that feels mature and impactful. Each character contributes to the story in a unique way, and their journeys come together to form a cohesive and powerful narrative. We will dive deeper into the VFX, cinematography, and visual world-building, exploring how the film creates its stunning visual identity and brings both Wakanda and Talokan to life in an immersive way. One of the most impressive aspects of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is its visual presentation, where VFX, cinematography, and world-building come together to create a rich and immersive cinematic experience. Unlike many superhero films that rely heavily on spectacle alone, this film uses its visuals to enhance storytelling, emotion, and cultural depth. Every frame feels intentional, whether it's showcasing the advanced beauty of Wakanda or introducing the mysterious and breathtaking underwater world of Talokan. The visual effects in the film are largely strong, especially when it comes to world creation. Wakanda itself continues to be one of the most visually unique settings in the MCU, blending futuristic technology with traditional African cultural elements. The use of vibranium-powered architecture, glowing cityscapes, and advanced tech interfaces gives Wakanda a distinct identity that feels both grounded and imaginative. The design choices reflect a civilization that has evolved independently, maintaining its cultural roots while advancing technologically. However, the real visual highlight of the film is the introduction of Talokan, ruled by Namor. This underwater kingdom is visually stunning and creatively designed, drawing inspiration from Mesoamerican culture. Unlike typical underwater worlds seen in films, Talokan is not just a generic ocean setting. It has its own identity, architecture, and atmosphere. The lighting, color palette, and movement of water create a dreamlike environment that feels both beautiful and slightly haunting. The bioluminescent elements and flowing structures give Talokan a mystical quality, making it one of the most memorable new locations in the MCU. Cinematography plays a major role in bringing these worlds to life. The film uses a mix of wide, sweeping shots and intimate close-ups to balance scale with emotion. Large establishing shots of Wakanda and Talokan emphasize their grandeur, while close-up shots during emotional scenes allow the audience to connect deeply with the characters. This balance ensures that the film never loses its emotional core, even during visually grand sequences. The underwater sequences deserve special mention. Filming and rendering underwater scenes is technically challenging, but the film manages to create a sense of fluidity and realism. The movement of characters, the way light filters through water, and the overall physics of the environment feel convincing. While there are moments where the CGI is slightly noticeable, especially in fast-paced action scenes, the overall execution remains impressive and immersive. The action sequences are also visually engaging, particularly the ocean battle between Wakanda and Talokan. This sequence stands out not just for its scale, but for how creatively it uses the environment. Instead of relying on traditional land-based combat, the film incorporates water as a dynamic element, making the fight feel fresh and unique. The contrast between Wakanda's technology and Talokan's aquatic abilities adds visual variety and keeps the action interesting. Costume design further enhances the film's visual identity. The Black Panther suit worn by Shuri reflects her personality and background, incorporating advanced technology and sleek design elements. Similarly, Namor's look is distinct and culturally inspired, setting him apart from other MCU antagonists. The costumes of the Dora Milaje, the Talokanil warriors, and Wakandan citizens all contribute to a cohesive and visually rich world. Lighting and color grading also play a crucial role in setting the tone of the film. Wakanda is often portrayed with warm, vibrant tones that reflect life, culture, and energy, while Talokan is depicted with cooler, deeper hues that emphasize mystery and depth. This contrast not only differentiates the two worlds, but also subtly reinforces their thematic differences. Despite its many strengths, the film's VFX is not without flaws. Some sequences, particularly those involving heavy CGI action, occasionally feel less polished compared to the rest of the film. These moments are noticeable but do not significantly detract from the overall experience. Given the scale and ambition of the film, the visual quality remains consistently high. Overall, the VFX, cinematography, and world-building in Black Panther Wakanda Forever are among its strongest technical achievements. The film successfully creates two distinct and visually stunning worlds, each with its own identity and cultural influence. More importantly, these visuals are not just for spectacle. They serve the story, enhance emotional moments, and deepen the audience's connection to the film. The performances in Black Panther Wakanda Forever are widely considered one of the strongest elements of the film, largely because the emotional weight of the story demanded grounded, realistic, and deeply human portrayals. Every major actor brings a sense of sincerity and depth to their role, making the film feel less like a typical superhero spectacle and more like a character-driven drama layered within a superhero world. Letitia Wright as Shuri delivers a complex and emotionally charged performance. She carries the majority of the film's emotional arc, transitioning from grief and denial to anger and ultimately acceptance. Wright effectively portrays Shuri's internal conflict, especially in scenes where she struggles between scientific logic and emotional pain. Her performance becomes more powerful as the film progresses, particularly after the death of Queen Ramonda, where Shuri's transformation into the Black Panther feels earned and believable, rather than forced. Angela Bassett as Queen Ramonda is one of the standout performances of the entire film. Her presence commands every scene she is in, combining authority, grace, and emotional vulnerability. Whether she is addressing the United Nations or confronting internal threats to Wakanda, Bassett brings a level of dignity and intensity that elevates the film. Her performance becomes even more impactful because it carries a sense of real-world grief and leadership under pressure, making her character's journey deeply memorable. Tenoch Huerta as Namor provides one of the most unique villain performances in the MCU. Instead of portraying traditional antagonists, Huerta brings calm intensity and emotional depth to Namor. His performance makes the character feel layered. He is not purely evil, but a ruler shaped by trauma and responsibility. His quiet confidence, combined with sudden bursts of intensity in battle scenes, creates a compelling contrast that keeps the audience engaged. Namor feels like a leader first and an antagonist second, which makes his presence more realistic and morally complex. Lupita Nyong'o as Nakia delivers a more subtle but important performance. Her character serves as an emotional anchor and a bridge between Wakanda and the outside world. Nyong'o portrays Nakia with calm strength and emotional restraint, particularly in the later parts of the film where her connection to T'Challa's legacy becomes more significant. Her performance is quiet but meaningful, especially in the final revelation involving the royal lineage. Danai Gurira as Okoye brings intensity and discipline to her role. Okoye's journey of losing her position and redefining her identity is portrayed with emotional realism. Gurira balances strength and vulnerability effectively, especially in moments where Okoye questions her purpose beyond her rank. Her physical performance in action scenes remains one of the most visually impressive aspects of the film, showcasing her skill as a warrior and protector of Wakanda. Supporting performances from other cast members also add depth to the film's world. Winston Duke as M'Baku brings a grounded, charismatic presence that balances seriousness with moments of subtle humor and wisdom. Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams adds youthful energy and curiosity, portraying a character who is both brilliant and emotionally responsive to the chaos around her. Overall, the ensemble cast works exceptionally well together, creating a sense of unity that strengthens the emotional impact of the film. Each performance contributes to the central themes of grief, legacy, and resilience, making the story feel authentic and deeply human despite its fantastical setting. The musical composition of Black Panther Wakanda Forever plays a crucial role in shaping the emotional identity of the film. Composed by Ludwig Göransson, the score goes far beyond being background music. It becomes a narrative tool that carries emotion, culture, and symbolism throughout the story. Unlike conventional superhero soundtracks that focus mainly on action intensity, this score emphasizes grief, legacy, cultural depth, and emotional healing. From the very beginning, the music establishes a tone of mourning and reflection. The opening sequences are accompanied by soft, haunting melodies that immediately signal to the audience that this is not a typical Marvel film. Instead, it is a story shaped by loss. The absence of loud, heroic themes in early moments reflects the emotional state of Wakanda, itself broken, vulnerable, and uncertain about its future. This subtle musical direction helps the audience connect with the emotional foundation of the film before any major action takes place. One of the most powerful uses of music in the film is during the funeral and memorial sequences involving Queen Ramonda. The combination of silence, vocals, and traditional inspired instrumentation creates an atmosphere of deep sorrow. These scenes are not just visually emotional, but musically overwhelming in a restrained and respectful way. The score avoids excessive dramatization and instead allows grief to feel natural and real, making these moments some of the most impactful in the entire MCU. The introduction of Talokan, ruled by Namor, brings an entirely different musical identity. The sound design here is heavily inspired by Mesoamerican culture, incorporating chants, percussion, and organic textures that reflect the underwater civilization's connection to nature and mythology. This contrast between Wakanda's African-inspired soundscape and Talokan's Mesoamerican-inspired music creates a strong auditory distinction between the two worlds, reinforcing their cultural identities. Wakanda's musical themes continue to evolve throughout the film. While the first film featured powerful celebratory themes representing pride and unity, this sequel's music carries a more somber and reflective tone. Even in moments of strength or action, there is often an underlying emotional weight present in the score. This reflects Wakanda's current state, still powerful, but deeply affected by loss and change. The emotional tone of the film is carefully supported by the score in every major scene. During Shuri's journey as she transitions from grief to anger and finally acceptance, the music subtly shifts alongside her emotional state. In her darker moments, the score becomes more intense and fragmented, reflecting internal chaos. In her moments of realization and peace, the music softens, allowing space for reflection and emotional clarity. Action sequences also benefit significantly from the background score. While the film is not primarily action-driven, the battles between Wakanda and Talokan are enhanced by rhythmic percussion and rising orchestral intensity. However, even in these moments, the music never loses its emotional grounding. Instead of focusing purely on adrenaline, it maintains a sense of consequence, reminding the audience that every battle has emotional and cultural stakes. One of the most unique aspects of the soundtrack is how it integrates silence. In several key emotional scenes, the absence of music is just as important as its presence. These moments of silence allow the performances of the actors, especially Letitia Wright and Angela Bassett, to carry the emotional weight without distraction. This careful balance between sound and silence demonstrates strong directorial and musical restraint. Overall, the music and emotional tone of Black Panther Wakanda Forever are essential to its storytelling success. The score does not simply accompany the film, it defines its emotional identity. Through its blend of cultural influences, thematic depth, and emotional sensitivity, It elevates the film from a visual spectacle to a deeply moving cinematic experience. The action sequences in Black Panther Wakanda Forever are designed with a different philosophy compared to many other Marvel films. Instead of focusing purely on constant spectacle or non-stop combat, the film uses action as a narrative extension of its emotional and political themes. Every fight sequence feels like it carries consequences, and every battle is tied directly to character motivation, especially the internal struggles of Shuri and the ideological conflict with Namor. One of the most distinctive action elements in the film is the introduction of underwater combat between Wakanda and Talokan. These sequences are visually unique in the MCU because they combine fluid underwater physics with coordinated military strategy. Instead of traditional ground-based warfare, the film presents battles that flow in 3 dimensions, making movement unpredictable and visually dynamic. The Talokan warriors under Namor's command use water itself as both a weapon and a shield, giving them a significant tactical advantage and making their attacks feel overwhelming and relentless. The mid-film attack on Wakanda is one of the most intense action sequences in the movie. It is not just a battle, it is a turning point in the narrative. The destruction caused during this assault is portrayed with emotional weight, especially as it directly leads to the loss of Queen Ramonda. This connection between action and consequence is one of the film's strongest storytelling choices. Unlike many superhero battles where destruction is often abstract, here it feels personal, grounded, and deeply impactful. The final confrontation between Shuri and Namor is another highlight of the film's action design. Set in a controlled environment away from water, the fight emphasizes strategy over brute force. Shuri's plan to weaken Namor by removing his connection to water creates a tactical layer to the battle. The choreography reflects their personalities. Namor fights with raw power and experience, while Shuri uses intelligence, technology, and emotional determination. This contrast makes the fight feel more like a psychological and ideological clash rather than just a physical one. Supporting characters also contribute significantly to the action sequences. Okoye delivers some of the most grounded and intense combat scenes, showcasing disciplined martial skill and unwavering loyalty. Riri Williams adds a different dimension through aerial combat, bringing a more experimental and less polished fighting style that reflects her inexperience but also her adaptability. Meanwhile, Wakandan forces and Jabari warriors led by M'Baku provide large-scale battlefield presence that balances the smaller, character-focused fights. However, the pacing of the film's action is intentionally uneven at times. This is not a flaw, but a deliberate storytelling choice. The film often slows down after major action sequences to allow emotional consequences to settle. This rhythm, action followed by reflection, creates a more grounded viewing experience. While some audiences expecting constant superhero action may find this pacing slower than usual, it ultimately strengthens the emotional depth of the story. Director Ryan Coogler maintains a consistent balance between spectacle and emotion throughout the film. His direction ensures that action scenes never exist in isolation. They are always connected to character development and narrative progression. Even large-scale battles are filmed with a sense of intimacy, often focusing on characters' expressions, decisions, and emotional states rather than just physical combat. Visually, the direction emphasizes clarity and emotional focus. Camera work is often steady during emotional moments and more dynamic during combat, but it never becomes chaotic. After analyzing every major aspect of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, it becomes clear that this film is not just another superhero sequel. It is a deeply emotional, character-driven, cinematic experience that carries both narrative weight and cultural significance. Directed by Ryan Coogler, the movie successfully balances tribute, storytelling, and world-building, creating something that feels both personal and epic at the same time. One of the film's greatest strengths lies in its emotional depth. The story is built around grief, loss, and healing, and it handles these themes with maturity and sincerity. Shuri's journey from denial to acceptance is at the heart of the film, and it is portrayed with realism that resonates strongly with the audience. The tribute to Chadwick Boseman is handled respectfully, without feeling forced or overly dramatic, which adds authenticity to the film's emotional core. Another major strength is the film's character development. Instead of relying solely on action, the movie invests time in building layered characters. Namor stands out as one of the most compelling antagonists in the MCU, thanks to his complex motivations and morally gray perspective. Supporting characters like Okoye, Nakia, and M'Baku also receive meaningful development, making the world feel rich and interconnected. Visually, the film is another strong success. The contrast between Wakanda and Talokan creates a visually engaging experience, supported by solid VFX and detailed world-building. While there are minor inconsistencies in CGI during certain action-heavy moments, the overall presentation remains impressive and immersive. The cinematography and costume design further enhance the uniqueness of both civilizations. The music by Ludwig Göransson is also a standout element, adding emotional weight and cultural depth to the film. The soundtrack does not just support the scenes, it elevates them, making key moments more powerful and memorable. The use of silence in certain scenes also demonstrates a strong understanding of emotional pacing. However, the film is not without its weaknesses. One of the most common criticisms is its pacing. The movie takes a slower, more deliberate approach, which may not appeal to viewers expecting fast-paced superhero action. Some sections, particularly in the middle of the film, feel slightly stretched, which can affect overall engagement for certain audiences. Another minor weakness is that the film tries to balance multiple storylines at once. Shuri's personal journey, Wakanda's political struggles, the introduction of Talokan, and the inclusion of Riri Williams. While all these elements are important, at times it can feel like the narrative is carrying too many threads, slightly reducing focus on the central conflict. Despite these issues, the film's strengths far outweigh its weaknesses. It succeeds in delivering a meaningful story that goes beyond typical superhero entertainment. It explores themes of identity, leadership, responsibility, and the impact of loss in a way that feels genuine and impactful. From an overall perspective, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever stands as one of the more mature and emotionally driven films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It may not be the most action-packed entry, but it is certainly one of the most meaningful. The film proves that superhero movies can be more than just spectacle. They can be deeply human stories that leave a lasting impression. Taking everything into account, Black Panther Wakanda Forever goes beyond being just a sequel. It becomes a film that reflects on legacy, culture, and emotional resilience in a way that very few superhero movies attempt. Directed by Ryan Coogler, the film carries a unique identity within the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it is built on real-world emotion as much as fictional storytelling. This duality between reality and fiction is what gives the film its lasting impact. One of the most important aspects of this film is its cultural significance. Wakanda has always represented a powerful vision of African identity, independence, and technological advancement, and this film continues to honor that legacy. At the same time, the introduction of Talokan expands the cultural scope of the story by bringing in Mesoamerican influences. This inclusion is not superficial. It is deeply embedded in the design, music, language, and traditions of the underwater civilization. Through Namor and his people, the film creates a second cultural pillar that stands equal to Wakanda, enriching the world building and giving the story a broader global perspective. Another major strength of the film is how it handles legacy. The absence of Chadwick Boseman is not hidden or ignored. Instead, it becomes the emotional center of the narrative. The film acknowledges loss in a way that feels honest and respectful, allowing both the characters and the audience to process it together. This makes the story feel deeply personal, even for viewers who are not usually invested in superhero films. The journey of Shuri becomes symbolic of that process, moving from grief to understanding, and from understanding to growth. In terms of rewatch value, the film offers a different experience each time it is viewed. On the first watch, the emotional weight and story progression takes center stage. However, on subsequent viewings, the smaller details become more noticeable. The subtle character expressions, the layered dialogue, the cultural references, and the musical cues that enhance each scene. This depth makes the film rewarding for viewers who appreciate storytelling beyond surface-level action. The film also stands out because it does not rely heavily on typical MCU formulas. While it includes action, humor, and large-scale conflict, these elements are not the primary focus. Instead, the film prioritizes emotional, character growth, and thematic exploration. This makes it feel more grounded and mature compared to many other entries in the franchise. However, this same quality can also be a limitation for some viewers who expect a faster pace or more traditional superhero excitement. From a broader perspective, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever plays an important role in shaping the future of the MCU. It introduces new characters like Riri Williams, expands the world through Talokan, and redefines the role of the Black Panther through Shuri. These developments ensure that the story of Wakanda continues to evolve, even as it honors its past. Another key takeaway from the film is its message about strength. Unlike many superhero stories that define strength through power and victory, this film presents strength as the ability to endure loss, to choose compassion over revenge, and to move forward despite pain. This message is what gives the film its emotional resonance and makes it memorable long after the credits roll. In the end, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is not just a film to watch, it is a film to experience. It blends culture, emotion, and storytelling in a way that feels meaningful and impactful. While it may not be perfect in terms of pacing or narrative focus, its strengths lie in its sincerity, depth, and willingness to take creative risks. Overall final rating, 8.5/10. It is a film that respects its legacy, expands its world, and delivers a powerful message about loss, healing, and the future. For viewers looking for more than just action, for those who want emotion, meaning, and depth, this film stands as one of the most significant entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The moral foundation of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is deeply rooted in human emotion, particularly in how individuals and societies respond to loss, responsibility, and change. Unlike traditional superhero films that focus mainly on victory and power, this story emphasizes emotional growth, resilience, and the importance of understanding pain rather than escaping it. At the center of this moral journey is Shuri, whose transformation represents one of the most powerful lessons of the film, the idea that grief is not something to be solved, but something to be processed and accepted. The first major moral lesson is acceptance of loss. In the beginning, Shuri refuses to accept the death of her brother, believing that science or intelligence could somehow fix what has happened. This reflects a very real human response to grief, denial. The film teaches that no matter how advanced or capable someone is, there are limits to control. True strength lies not in reversing loss, but in accepting it and learning to live with it. This message becomes increasingly important as the story progresses, showing that healing begins only when denial ends. Another key moral theme is the danger of unresolved anger. After facing personal tragedy, Shuri's emotions shift from denial to anger, and this anger begins to influence her decisions. Through her journey, the film highlights how pain, when left unchecked, can turn into destructive force. This is mirrored in the character of Namor, whose actions are driven by a long history of suffering and fear for his people. Both characters show how anger can shape choices, but the story ultimately suggests that acting purely out of anger leads to more conflict, rather than resolution. The moral contrast between Shuri and Namor introduces another important lesson. Perspective shapes morality. Namor is not portrayed as a typical villain. Instead, he is someone who believes he is protecting his people at all costs. From his perspective, his actions are justified. This teaches the audience that morality is often complex, and understanding another person's perspective is essential before judging them. The film encourages viewers to think beyond simple right and wrong definitions and consider the deeper reasons behind people's actions. A powerful moral point in the film is choosing mercy over revenge. One of the most defining moments comes when Shuri has the opportunity to take revenge against Namor. Given everything she has lost, her anger is understandable. However, her decision to spare him represents a major turning point, not just in the story, but in her character. This moment teaches that true strength is not in revenge, but in restraint. Choosing mercy, even when revenge feels justified, can break cycles of violence and open the door to peace. The story also emphasizes the responsibility that comes with power. Wakanda is one of the most advanced nations in the world, and with that power comes global attention and pressure. The film shows that power is not just about dominance, it is about responsibility, protection, and wise decision-making. Through its leadership struggles, the story highlights that true leadership is not about control, but about making choices that benefit not just oneself, but the greater community. Another important moral lesson is the importance of cultural identity and unity. Wakanda and Talokan are both deeply connected to their traditions and heritage. The film shows that culture is a source of strength, providing identity and purpose even during times of crisis. At the same time, it also teaches that unity within a community is essential for survival. Despite internal struggles, Wakanda remains strong because its people stand together. Finally, the film introduces the idea of growth through pain. Every major character in the story experiences loss or challenge, but these experiences ultimately lead to growth. Shuri becomes a stronger and wiser leader, not because she avoided pain, but because she faced it. This reinforces the idea that difficult experiences, while painful, can lead to personal development and a deeper understanding of life. In Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, the second layer of moral depth moves beyond personal grief and enters the complex world of leadership, responsibility, and ethical decision-making. The film presents leadership not as a position of privilege, but as a burden that requires sacrifice, wisdom, and emotional control. Through the journeys of Shuri, Queen Ramonda, and Namor, the story highlights how difficult it is to lead when every decision carries consequences that affect entire nations. One of the central moral lessons in this part is that true leadership requires sacrifice. Queen Ramonda represents this idea powerfully. As a ruler, she is not just protecting her family, but an entire nation. Her decisions are guided by responsibility rather than personal comfort, and this ultimately leads her to make the ultimate sacrifice. The film shows that leadership often demands putting others before oneself, even when the cost is extremely high. This teaches that real leaders are defined not by their authority, but by what they are willing to give up for the greater good. Another important moral theme is the weight of responsibility that comes with power. Wakanda's advanced technology and vibranium resources make it one of the most powerful nations in the world. But that power attracts danger and attention. The story makes it clear that power is not just an advantage, it is a responsibility that must be handled carefully. Shuri's journey reflects this realization as she learns that every decision she makes as the Black Panther affects not only her people, but the balance of the entire world. The film also explores the importance of ethical decision-making under pressure. Throughout the story, characters are forced to make choices in high-stress situations where there is no perfect answer. Whether it is choosing between war and peace or protecting one life over many, the film shows that leadership often involves making difficult decisions with limited options. This moral lesson highlights that doing the right thing is not always clear or easy, and sometimes leaders must choose the lesser of two difficult outcomes. Through Namor's perspective, the film introduces the idea that protection can sometimes lead to aggression. Namor's actions are driven by his desire to protect Talokan from the surface world. However, his methods are extreme, showing how fear and responsibility can push leaders toward destructive decisions. This creates a moral contrast with Shuri, who eventually chooses a different path. The lesson here is that while protecting others is important, it should not come at the cost of unnecessary destruction or loss of humanity. Another key moral lesson is the balance between tradition and progress. Wakanda is deeply rooted in its traditions, but it is also one of the most technologically advanced societies. The film shows that holding on to tradition is important for identity, but it should not prevent growth and change. Shuri represents progress and innovation, while other leaders represent tradition. The story teaches that true strength lies in finding a balance between the two, rather than choosing one over the other. The role of Okoye adds another layer to this moral discussion. Her journey shows that identity is not tied to a title or position. When she loses her role as General of the Dora Milaje, she struggles with her sense of purpose. However, she eventually proves that her value comes from her character and actions, not her rank. This teaches that who we are is defined by our choices and values, not by external titles or recognition. The story also emphasizes collective responsibility over individual power. While the Black Panther is a central figure, Wakanda's strength comes from its people working together. The film shows that no single individual, no matter how powerful, can carry the burden of leadership alone. Unity, cooperation, and trust are essential for survival and progress. This moral reinforces the idea that communities thrive when responsibilities are shared. Finally, this part highlights the importance of thinking long-term rather than reacting emotionally. Early in the story, decisions driven by emotion lead to escalation and conflict. However, as Shuri grows, she begins to think strategically and consider the long-term impact of her actions. This shift reflects a key moral lesson. Wise decisions are those that consider the future, not just the present moment. In this deeper layer of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the moral focus shifts toward legacy, identity, and the responsibility of shaping the future. The film makes it clear that a person's life is not defined only by what they achieve in the present, but by what they leave behind for the next generation. Through the journey of Shuri, the memory of T'Challa, and the revelation brought by Nakia, the story delivers one of its most powerful messages. Legacy is not about power, it is about values, influence, and continuity. One of the central moral lessons here is that legacy lives through people, not just history. Even though T'Challa is no longer physically present, his impact is felt in every decision, every value, and every act of leadership within Wakanda. The film teaches that true legacy is not about monuments or titles, but about how a person's actions shape others. Shuri carries forward her brother's compassion and sense of responsibility, proving that legacy continues through those who choose to honor it. The introduction of the next generation, especially T'Challa's son, reinforces the idea that the future is built on the foundation of the past. This moment is not just emotional, it is symbolic. It shows that even after loss, life continues, and with it comes new hope. The moral here is that we must prepare the next generation not only with strength, but with values that guide them toward a better future. What we teach and leave behind matters more than what we achieve in the present. Another important lesson is the search for identity in times of change. Throughout the film, Shuri struggles to understand who she is without her brother. Is she just a scientist, or can she become something more? Her journey reflects a universal human experience, the struggle to redefine oneself after a major loss or change. The story teaches that identity is not fixed. It evolves with experience, pain, and growth. Shuri does not become a copy of T'Challa. She becomes her own version of the Black Panther, shaped by her unique perspective. The film also explores how culture shapes identity and purpose. Wakanda and Talokan both draw strength from their traditions, histories, and shared values. This highlights the importance of cultural roots in defining who we are. The moral here is that understanding and preserving culture gives individuals and communities a sense of belonging and direction, especially during times of uncertainty. Through the contrast between Shuri and Namor, the story presents another key moral: the legacy of pain can either divide or unite. Namor's past has made him protective and aggressive, while Shuri eventually chooses a path of balance and understanding. This shows that the experiences we inherit, whether they are positive or painful, do not have to control our future. We have the power to transform those experiences into something better. A particularly meaningful lesson in this part is the importance remembrance without being trapped by the past. Shuri's final act of burning her funeral garments symbolizes this perfectly. She does not forget her loved ones, but she releases the weight of her grief. The moral here is that honoring the past does not mean being stuck in it. True growth comes from remembering while still moving forward. The film also emphasizes hope as a driving force for the future. Even after loss, conflict, and uncertainty, the story ends with a sense of calm and possibility. This teaches that hope is not about ignoring reality. It is about believing that things can improve despite challenges. The presence of a new generation and the rebuilding of Wakanda both symbolize this idea. Finally, this part highlights the responsibility to shape a better future. Every decision made by leaders like Shuri and Namor will affect future generations. The moral here is that we are not just living for ourselves, we are shaping the world that others will inherit. This adds a deeper layer of responsibility to every choice, reminding us that our actions have lasting consequences. Overall, the moral analysis shows that Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a story about continuity and transformation. It teaches that legacy is built through values, identity is shaped through experience, and the future depends on the choices we make today. It is a powerful reminder that even after loss, life continues, and with it comes the opportunity to create something meaningful for. In this advanced layer of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the moral discussion expands beyond personal growth and leadership into a broader reflection on humanity, global power dynamics, and the ethical responsibilities that come with influence. The film presents a world where nations are not isolated, and every action has global consequences. Through the experiences of Shuri and Namor, the story explores how power can shape not only individuals, but entire civilizations, and how the misuse or misunderstanding of that power can lead to conflict. One of the most significant moral lessons in this part is that power without understanding leads to fear and conflict. The outside world's obsession with vibranium demonstrates how ignorance can turn into aggression. Nations that do not fully understand Wakanda's intentions see its power as a threat rather than an opportunity for cooperation. This creates tension and highlights a real-world truth. When people or societies fear what they do not understand, they often respond with hostility. The film teaches that knowledge, communication, and mutual respect are essential to prevent unnecessary conflict. Another important moral theme is the ethical responsibility of advanced societies. Wakanda is one of the most powerful nations on Earth, and Talokan is equally formidable beneath the ocean. Both societies possess resources and abilities that others do not, and this places them in a position of great responsibility. The story raises an important question. Should powerful nations protect only themselves, or should they play a role in shaping a safer world? Through Shuri's growth, the film suggests that true strength lies in using power wisely, not selfishly. The character of Namor introduces the idea that fear can shape entire civilizations. His distrust of the surface world is not without reason. It is built on history, survival, and the need to protect his people. However, this fear also leads him to take extreme actions, showing how fear, when left unchecked, can justify aggression. This moral lesson reflects a broader human truth. Fear can be both protective and destructive, depending on how it is managed. A key moral contrast in this part is between reaction and reflection. Early in the story, decisions are often made in reaction to immediate threats, leading to escalation. However, as the narrative progresses, Shuri begins to act with reflection and long-term thinking. This shift highlights the importance of pausing, understanding, and considering consequences before taking action. The film teaches that thoughtful decisions, even in moments of pressure, can prevent larger conflicts. The story also emphasizes shared humanity despite differences. Wakanda and Talokan are very different societies, with distinct cultures and perspectives, yet they share similar fears, goals, and desires to protect their people and preserve their way of life. This realization becomes crucial in the final resolution, where understanding replaces hostility. The moral here is that recognizing common ground can bridge even the deepest divides. Another important lesson is the danger of isolation in a connected world. Both Wakanda and Talokan initially rely on secrecy and isolation for protection. However, the film shows that complete isolation is no longer sustainable in a world where information and technology connect everyone. The moral suggests that while protecting one's identity is important, engagement and cooperation are necessary for long-term stability. The film also explores the idea that peace is an active choice, not a passive state. Peace between Wakanda and Talokan is not achieved by chance. It is the result of deliberate decisions, restraint, and mutual understanding. This teaches that peace requires effort, compromise, and continuous commitment. It is not something that happens automatically, but something that must be maintained. Finally, this part highlights the global impact of individual choices. Shuri's decision to spare Namor does not just affect her personally. It shapes the relationship between two powerful nations and influences the balance of the world. This reinforces the idea that individual actions, especially those made by leaders, can have far-reaching consequences. In this deeper emotional layer of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the moral focus turns inward toward healing, self-understanding, and the quiet strength required to rebuild after loss. While earlier parts explored leadership and global conflict, this section highlights the internal journey of individuals, especially Shuri, and the universal lessons about how people cope with pain, grow through adversity, and find meaning after tragedy. One of the most powerful moral lessons here is that healing is not immediate. It is a gradual process. The film shows that grief does not disappear after a single realization or emotional moment. Instead, it evolves over time. Shuri's journey from denial to acceptance is not quick or easy, and that is what makes it realistic. The story teaches that healing requires patience, and it is okay to take time to process emotions rather than forcing oneself to move on too quickly. Another key moral is the importance of facing emotions rather than suppressing them. At the beginning of the story, Shuri avoids her grief by focusing on logic and work. However, this only deepens her pain. It is only when she allows herself to feel her emotions fully that she begins to heal. This lesson is deeply relatable. Ignoring emotions does not make them disappear. It often makes them stronger. True growth comes from acknowledging and understanding what we feel. The film also highlights inner strength as the foundation of true resilience. Unlike physical strength, which is visible and immediate, inner strength is quiet and often developed through hardship. Shuri's transformation shows that resilience is built not by avoiding pain, but by enduring it and learning from it. This moral emphasizes that strength is not about being unaffected by challenges, but about continuing to move forward despite them. Another important life lesson is the balance between holding on and letting go. The story does not suggest forgetting the past or ignoring memories. Instead, it teaches that while memories should be honored, they should not become a burden that prevents growth. Shuri's final act symbolizes this balance. She remembers her loved ones, but she also allows herself to move forward. This lesson is essential in real life, where people often struggle between preserving memories and finding closure. Through its characters, the film also explores the idea that pain can lead to self-discovery. Difficult experiences often force individuals to confront who they truly are. For Shuri, loss pushes her to discover her own identity beyond being T'Challa's sister. This moral suggests that while pain is difficult, it can also lead to a deeper understanding of oneself and one's purpose. The story further teaches the importance of emotional support and connection. Even though Shuri goes through much of her journey internally, the presence of others, friends, family, and allies plays a crucial role in her healing. This highlights the idea that while personal growth is individual, it is often supported by relationships. Human connection remains a key factor in overcoming hardship. Another subtle but important lesson is accepting imperfection in life and in oneself. As we reach the end of our deep dive into Black Panther Wakanda Forever, this story leaves us with much more than just action and spectacle. It leaves us with emotion, meaning, and powerful life lessons. From the journey of Shuri, we saw how grief can shape a person, but also how it can lead to growth if we choose understanding over anger. The conflict with Namor showed us that every side has its own truth. And sometimes the strongest decision is not to fight, but to show restraint. This film beautifully reminds us that true strength is not about power, but about control, compassion, and responsibility. Wakanda's journey teaches us the importance of unity, culture, and leadership, while also showing that even the strongest nations must adapt to change. And most importantly, the legacy of T'Challa proves that a person's impact never truly ends. It lives on through values, memories, and the people they inspire. If you enjoyed this detailed explanation, review, and moral breakdown, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more ICE Deep Movie Breakdown videos. Let me know in the comments what you think about this film and which movie you want next. Until then, keep watching, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video.